Connecticut. Known as one of the wealthiest, most peaceful, and safest states in America. Grand mansions, century-old oak trees, serene suburbs. But beneath this postcard-perfect image lies a dark history that most people don't know about. The stories I'm going to tell you tonight are the kind that will keep you tossing and turning in bed at midnight. If you're afraid of the dark, keep the lights on. If you live alone, maybe you should watch this video tomorrow during daylight. Because we're diving into Connecticut's darkest secrets. Are you ready? Then let's begin. But first, let me tell you this. If you watch this video until the end, there's a detail in the last story that you'll have trouble finding even on the internet. So don't skip ahead. Every second matters. Subscribe and like. Let's get started. In the northwest of Connecticut, deep within the forests of Cornwall, there's a village that was erased from maps. Its name is Dudleytown, and this village's story isn't just one of America's most chilling urban legends. To this day, no one can fully explain what happened there. The 1740s. The Dudley family, emigrating from England to America, decided to settle in this remote corner of Connecticut. Why? Because the Dudley family was known as cursed in England. Edmund Dudley had been executed in 1510 during the reign of King Henry VII, father of Henry VIII. The family had struggled with misfortune for generations. When they came to America, they thought they would make a fresh start. But the curse came with them. Or at least that's what the villagers believed. The first strange events began in the late 1740s. Families settling in Dudleytown started complaining about strange sounds coming from the forest at night. These weren't animal sounds. They weren't human screams either. They were sounds they couldn't describe. Sounds they had never heard before. It was as if the forest itself was speaking. In 1774, a farmer named Abiel Dudley suddenly went mad one morning while working in his field. There was no reason. One minute the man was normal. The next, he was screaming uncontrollably and tearing out his own hair. When they took him home, his eyes were completely empty. He never returned to normal. He spent the rest of his life in one of Connecticut's first mental asylums. But this was just the beginning. In 1792, a man named Gershon Hollister was standing in front of his house when his wife Sarah was struck by lightning. Okay, you might say lightning strikes happen, but the incident didn't end with the lightning. Just a few weeks after Sarah's death, Gershon also went insane, just like Abiel, with the same empty eyes, the same inexplicable screams. In 1804, General Herman Swift's wife hanged herself in the basement of their home. She left no note. There was no explanation. One day she was happy, the next day she was dead. General Swift left Dudleytown after that and never returned. In 1813, a respected man named Nathaniel Carter moved his family to Dudleytown. He was seeking peace. A few months later, he had to travel to New York for business. When he returned, he found his wife completely insane. She was talking to the wall, screaming at people who didn't exist, unable to recognize her own children. Carter admitted his wife to a hospital. She died shortly after. Carter never remarried. And here's the strangest part. By the mid-1800s, not a single person remained in Dudleytown. Everyone had either died, gone mad, or fled. The houses were abandoned. The forest swallowed everything. The roads closed. Dudleytown was erased from the maps.
But the story doesn't end there. In the early 1900s, a New York doctor named Dr. William Clark discovered the ruins of Dudleytown. He was fascinated. He built a summer home there with his wife. As a modern man, he didn't believe in superstitions. A curse? Nonsense. Just coincidences and stories from ignorant villagers. In 1918, Dr. Clark had to go to the city for business again. He left his wife alone in Dudleytown. It would only be a few days. When he returned, his wife was missing. They found her in the forest. She wasn't dead, but she had completely lost her mind. It was identical to the previously described cases. Empty eyes, staring at things that weren't there. Uncontrollable murmuring. Dr. Clark's wife spent the rest of her life in a mental hospital. Coincidence? Maybe. But how do you explain so many people across such different time periods, all going mad in exactly the same way. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Today, Dudleytown is protected by an organization called the Dark Entry Forest Association. And by protected, I mean no one is allowed to enter. The official explanation is ecosystem preservation. But if you talk to the local police, they'll tell you different stories. In the 1990s, a group of teenagers secretly entered Dudleytown. They were going to conduct paranormal research. They had cameras, audio recording equipment. Not professional, but they were serious. A few hours after entering, they all came running out. They never showed their recordings to anyone. They didn't talk about what they saw. One member of the group spoke on a podcast a few years later. All he said was, "There's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something there and it didn't want us." Over the years, police have detained dozens of people around Dudleytown, all for trespassing. But some were different when they came out. Some couldn't speak for days. Some started crying when they tried to describe what they saw. And still, no one officially explains what happened to Dudleytown. This village, erased from maps, is treated as if it never existed. But the forest is still there. And at night, if you ask the elderly residents of Cornwall, they'll tell you. You can still hear the sounds coming from the Dudleytown forests, if you dare to listen. At this point, I want to ask you something. While watching this video, did you feel something strange in your room? Maybe it's just your imagination. Or maybe... Anyway, let's move on to the second story. But first, do this. If this story gave you goosebumps, hit the like button, because the next story is even more terrifying than Dudleytown. Subscribe now. Let's continue with the horror. Welcome back to the new story. We're continuing with the horror without slowing down. Have you watched The Conjuring, The Haunting in Connecticut, Annabelle? There are real stories behind all these films. And behind these real stories are two names, Ed and Lorraine Warren, Connecticut's most famous paranormal investigators. And the story I'm about to tell you is one of their most disturbing cases. 1986, the Snedeker family moves into a house in Southington, Connecticut. Mother Carmen, Father Al, and their 4 children. Their oldest son Philip had been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they needed to be close to a hospital in Hartford for treatment. The house was big, the rent was cheap, it seemed perfect. The first clue came on the day they moved in. While exploring the basement, Carmen found strange equipment, metal tables, strange tools, and on the walls, blood stains. When she asked the landlord, the man hesitated. Then he confessed. This house used to be a funeral home. For years, bodies had been embalmed in this basement. Most families would have left immediately, but the Snedekers decided to stay. Philip's treatment was ongoing. They had no other options. Besides, dead people couldn't be scary, right? They were just dead. The first few weeks passed normally. Then Philip started to change. It wasn't from his illness. It was something different. At night, he would talk to people who weren't there in his room. He told his family he saw dark men in the house. Doctors said it was chemotherapy side effects. Hallucinations were common. But then Carmen started seeing things too. One night, while drinking water in the kitchen, she felt a presence behind her. When she turned around, no one was there. But on the refrigerator door, there were letters, as if written with a finger. Just 3 letters. Get out. No one had written it. Al was asleep. The children were asleep. Carmen was alone. As days passed, the events intensified. Doors opened and closed by themselves. Footsteps were heard. And the smell of death everywhere. The smell of rotting flesh. The smell of embalming fluid. Carmen cleaned the house repeatedly, but the smell wouldn't go away. Then the physical attacks began. One morning, Carmen woke up and found marks on her body, scratch marks, as if someone had been scratching her at night. Al started finding the same marks too. They appeared on the children as well. Their youngest son woke up screaming. One night, a hand from under his bed had been trying to pull him down. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe and like. Philip was getting worse and worse. He wasn't just seeing dark men anymore. He was talking to them. And he said he knew what they wanted. He started attacking the family. He grabbed his mother by the throat. He punched his father. Once he tried to drag his cousin into the basement. This is exactly when Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved. When the Warrens arrived at the house, Lorraine's first reaction was shocking. As soon as she stepped through the door, she stopped. Her face went pale. She turned to Ed and said only this: "This house is full of bodies. I can feel them. They're all here. Still here." The Warrens investigated this house for 9 weeks. They kept records, they took photographs, and what they found shocked even them. It was revealed that the person who performed the embalming when the house was used as a funeral home was a necrophile. He had violated the corpses, and this atrocity had somehow tainted the house. The Warrens arranged a Catholic ceremony at the house. Bishop John J. O'Connor, Archbishop of New York, came personally and performed an exorcism. In photographs taken during this ceremony, unexplained shadows, faces, and figures appear. These photographs are still kept in the Warrens' archives. After the ceremony, the Snedeker family continued to live in the house. The events decreased, but never completely stopped. They moved 2 years later. Philip's cancer eventually took him. Years later, Carmen wrote a book and recounted what they experienced. Her story became first a book, then the Haunting in Connecticut documentary, and finally a Hollywood film. But there are details the films don't show. In the Warrens' archives, there are audio recordings from this case. In these recordings, you can hear sounds captured during seances in the house. In one of them, a male voice clearly says, "Get out." In another recording, there are murmurs in an unidentifiable language. Experts couldn't identify the language. The house is still there today. Other people live in it. And interestingly, subsequent residents have also reported strange occurrences, but none as intense as the Snedekers experienced. Maybe the house was satisfied. Or maybe it was just waiting for the right family. Now I'm going to ask you something. Have you ever felt like you were being watched while alone in your home? Have you ever heard sounds you couldn't explain? Maybe it was just the house settling. Or maybe. Anyway, let's move on to our final story. And I promise you this last story will make this night unforgettable. But first, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell icon, because I share stories like these every week. And the next story will give you goosebumps. The horror continues.
Welcome back to part 2. Your horror stories are here. The story I'm about to tell you is one of Connecticut's darkest, least known, but most disturbing tales. This is the kind of story you'll have trouble finding in full, even on the internet, because Connecticut authorities tried to cover up this story for years. But the truth always finds a way to surface. Fairfield County, Connecticut's wealthiest region. Towns like Greenwich, Stamford, and Westport, where millionaires live. But beneath this glittering surface lies a past that no one wants to talk about. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, mental asylums in America had become hellholes. Patients were treated not as patients, but as prisoners. And in Connecticut's Fairfield region, there was a hospital whose very name made the local residents' blood run cold. The official name of this hospital appears differently in various records. Some call it Fairfield State Hospital, others use different names. But the locals knew it by one name only, the Hell House. At this hospital, there was one particular doctor. I won't say his name because his family still lives in the area and they've received numerous lawsuit threats because of this story. But what this doctor did constitutes one of the darkest pages in medical history. This doctor conducted experiments on children with hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus is a condition commonly known as water on the brain. The skull grows abnormally large due to cerebrospinal fluid accumulating in the skull. There was no treatment at the time. These children were taken from their families, locked away in the hospital, and forgotten. But this doctor didn't forget them. He used them. According to statements given years later by surviving hospital staff, this doctor performed surgical experiments on the children, brain surgeries, skull operations, and none of these were for treatment purposes. They were purely experimental. Most of the children didn't survive these operations. Those who did changed. This is where the Melonheads legend begins. In the 1960s, strange reports started coming from the forested areas of Fairfield County. People said they saw strange creatures on the roads and in the forests at night. They were human-sized, but their heads were abnormally large. Their clothes were like rags, and their eyes were completely empty. At first, no one took it seriously. They said it was drunk teenagers making things up. Imagination, they said. But as the reports multiplied, they started appearing in police records. In 1967, a couple in the town of Trumbull saw a figure in the middle of the road while driving home at night. When the headlights illuminated the figure, the woman screamed. Her husband stepped on the gas and passed the figure. When they got home, they called the police. In their statement, they said, "It was like a human, but it wasn't human. Its head was very large, and when it looked at us, there was no expression on its face. None at all." In 1971, a group of teenagers was camping in the forest in the Velvet Street area of Monroe. At midnight, they heard footsteps around their tents. When they looked outside, they saw figures moving among the trees. They couldn't say how many there were, maybe 3, maybe 5. They all moved the same way, slow, staggering, and all their heads were large. The teenagers fled the forest that night. They left their equipment, their tents behind. When they returned with police the next day, their tents had been torn apart. The food inside had been eaten. And on the tent fabric, there were scratch marks. At this point, the local press picked up the story. The term Melonheads first appeared in newspaper headlines, and people started investigating. Where did these creatures come from? That's when the dark past of Fairfield Hospital came to light. The hospital had been closed in the early 1960s. Official reason? Budget cuts. But former employees told a different story. Before the hospital closed, there had been a fire. Many patients lost their lives in this fire, but some escaped. And could some of these escaped patients have been the hydrocephalus patients who had been experimented on? Think about it. People isolated from society for years, having undergone multiple brain surgeries, experiencing trauma upon trauma, they escape into the forest during the fire, and they survive there. How? Perhaps they had learned to survive by stealing food from hospital cafeterias for years. Perhaps their survival instincts were stronger than those of normal people, and perhaps they multiplied in the forest. This theory sounds crazy, I know, but Melonhead sightings continued from the 1960s through the 2000s. For 40 years, different people in different places said they saw the same things. They can't all be made up, can they? In 2003, a group of documentary filmmakers came to Fairfield County to investigate the Melonhead story. They filmed for days on Velvet Street, Sawmill City Road, and the area known as Dracula Drive. Most of the footage they captured was just dark forest. But one shot was different. In this footage, there's a figure moving among the trees. A very brief moment, maybe 2 seconds. But the figure's head appears disproportionately large compared to its body. The documentary filmmakers sent this footage to experts for analysis. The result was inconclusive. They couldn't definitively say what it was. But they also couldn't definitively say it wasn't human.
Today, in Fairfield County, Melonheads is still a taboo subject. Do locals consider them real? If you ask most people, they'll laugh. Childhood fairy tale, they'll say. But they'll also admit they speed up their cars when passing through Velvet Street at night. And the old hospital? Demolished. Even the foundations were removed, as if it never existed. But some of the hospital records still exist, and in these records, it doesn't clearly state how many patients died in the fire, or how many escaped. The numbers don't add up. Maybe some patients are still in the forest. Maybe they've been living there for generations. Maybe the people who see them are right. Or maybe this is just a reflection of Connecticut's dark past etched into collective memory. But let me tell you this. If your car breaks down one night in the Fairfield County forests, don't wait by the side of the road for help. Start walking. And whatever you do, don't look at the forest. So far, I've told 3 stories. The cursed village of Dudleytown, the funeral home nightmare the Snedeker family experienced, and the dark reality of the Melonheads. But now let's take a step back and try to understand why Connecticut hosts so much paranormal activity. Connecticut is one of America's oldest states. It was founded in 1636. That means it has nearly 400 years of history. And during these 400 years, countless tragedies occurred on this land. First, there were the Native Americans. The Pequot tribe lived on these lands. In 1637, English colonists massacred hundreds of natives during the Pequot War. Women, children, elderly, all were killed. Their bodies were burned. This massacre was recorded as one of the bloodiest events in American history. Then came the witch trials. Although Salem is more famous, Connecticut had its own witch trials. In 1647, Alcee Young became the first witch executed in Connecticut. After her, dozens more suffered the same fate. Innocent people were hanged, burned, and stoned. And then the wars, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. Each war spilled more blood on Connecticut's soil. Each war brought more death, more suffering, more trauma. Paranormal researchers believe that violent emotional events are required for a place to become haunted. Sudden deaths, massacres, great suffering, and Connecticut more than meets all these criteria. But what do we see from a scientific perspective? Connecticut's geological structure has interesting features. The state sits on ancient granite rocks. These rocks contain high amounts of quartz, and quartz has a property scientists call the piezoelectric effect. It can generate electricity under pressure. Some theorists suggest that this geological structure, under certain conditions, can create electromagnetic fields, and these electromagnetic fields can affect the human brain. They can cause hallucinations, feelings of paranoia, and even temporary psychotic episodes. Could this theory explain the mass insanity cases in Dudleytown? Maybe. Could this explain what the Snedeker family experienced? Partially. Could this explain the Melonheads? Probably not. So what do you think about this? Because the truth is, science can't explain everything, at least not yet. And Connecticut's dark history constantly reminds us that there are things beyond the boundaries of science. Now I want to tell you about Connecticut's paranormal map, because the 3 stories I've told are just the tip of the iceberg. In this small state, there are hundreds of documented paranormal cases. Union Cemetery in the town of Easton is considered one of America's most haunted cemeteries. A ghost known as the White Lady has been seen by dozens of people. Once a firefighter returning from the night shift thought he hit a woman in a white dress. When he got out of the car, no one was there. But on his car's front bumper, he found unexplained scratches and pieces of white fabric. Remington Arms Factory in Bridgeport. In the late 1800s, a worker died horribly here, crushed between the machines. Since that day, night shift workers say they see a figure walking among the machines. The figure always looks in the same direction, as if searching for something. Captain Grant's Inn in the town of Preston. Built in 1754, this historic inn has been the subject of countless paranormal activity reports. Guests have said they hear footsteps walking around their rooms at night, their beds shake, and some have even felt someone breathing on their faces. The inn's owner doesn't deny these stories. On the contrary, she charges higher prices for the haunted rooms. And of course, the Warrens Museum. In Monroe, at Ed and Lorraine Warren's home,
objects from decades of paranormal investigation are displayed. The most famous is the Annabelle doll. You know it from the movies. But besides that, there are dozens of cursed objects in the museum. Each one has a story behind it. Each one has deaths, suffering, and tragedies behind it. The museum is no longer open to the public for security reasons, but the Warren family occasionally organizes private tours. And everyone who attends these tours says the same thing. There's something in that house. You can feel it. You might not see it, but you know it's there. Sarah, 42 years old, lives in Milford. In 2018, she moved into an old house with her family. The house was built in the 1890s. The first few months passed normally. Then her young daughter Lily started talking about the old man. The old man came to her room at night. He told her stories. Sarah initially thought it was imagination, but when Lily started describing the old man's clothes, Sarah froze because the clothes Lily described perfectly matched men's fashion from the early 1900s. How could Lily know this? Mike, 35 years old, lives in New Haven. One night he suddenly woke up while sleeping in his apartment. He felt a heavy pressure on his chest. He couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, you might say. But Mike saw a figure at the foot of his bed. A dark, indistinct figure, and the figure leaned toward him. Mike tried to scream at that moment, but no sound came out. Then, everything ended. The figure disappeared. He could move again. But he never forgot that night. Jennifer, 28 years old, grew up in Danbury. As a child, she hated going down to her family's basement, because every time she went down, she felt like someone was watching her. One day, giving in to her curiosity, she rummaged through the old trunks in the basement. In one of the trunks, she found old photographs. There were people she didn't recognize in the photos, but in one photo there was a picture of her own room, and in the corner of the room there was a figure that was unclear but definitely there. Jennifer showed this photo to her family. Her family destroyed the photo, and they never talked about it again. These stories come from every corner of Connecticut, from wealthy suburbs, from poor neighborhoods, from old houses, from new apartments. It's as if this state itself is somehow different, a state full of horror. Skeptics explain the abundance of paranormal activity reports in Connecticut with several factors. First, historical awareness. Connecticut residents are aware of their state's dark past. This awareness may make them prone to interpreting ordinary events as extraordinary. Second, media influence. After the Conjuring films, paranormal activity reports increased dramatically. People started seeing in real life what they saw in films. Maybe what they saw really was there, or maybe their brains showed them what they wanted to see. Third, structural problems in old houses. There are thousands of old houses in Connecticut. These houses creak, groan, and make strange sounds. Air currents open and close doors. Mice scurry in the walls. All of these can be misinterpreted as paranormal activity. But do these explanations cover everything? What about the unexplained figures in photographs? What about ghosts seen by multiple people at the same time? What about the details children describe that match historical periods? Science can't answer for now. Maybe it never will, because some things are beyond the boundaries of science. And maybe that's how it should be. Connecticut's dark secrets don't end with this video. The stories I've told are just the beginning. In this small state, there are hundreds more stories waiting to be discovered. Cursed houses, haunted cemeteries, unexplained events. And maybe, one day, you will visit Connecticut too. Maybe you'll pass near the Dudleytown forests. Maybe you'll stay at an old inn. Maybe at midnight, lying in your bed, you'll feel something watching you. Then, you'll remember this video. And you'll ask yourself, what if it's real? Now, if this video gave you goosebumps, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon, because I share stories like these every week. And the next video might be about the state where you live. Are you ready?
Welcome to the final part of today's horrors. Subscribe, like, and let's continue. While watching this video, you probably asked yourself a question. Why Connecticut? There are 50 states in America. Why does this small state host so many dark stories? Why did people go mad in Dudleytown? Why did the Snedeker family's home turn into a nightmare? Why does the Melonheads legend continue to live on for generations? The answer lies in Connecticut's unique location and history. This state is one of America's oldest settlements. It was founded in 1636. That means it has nearly 400 years of uninterrupted history. And during these 400 years, this land witnessed countless tragedies, countless deaths, countless suffering. But it's not just history. Connecticut's geography also plays an important role. 60% of the state is covered in forests. These forests have been here for centuries. Some of the trees are older than the first colonists. Some are 300, 400 years old. And in these forests, there are corners that the modern world cannot reach. Like Dudleytown. Like the areas where the Melonheads are claimed to hide. Like valleys where human feet haven't stepped in years. Paranormal investigator John Zaffis says Connecticut is a perfect storm for paranormal activity. Zaffis is Ed and Lorraine Warren's nephew and worked alongside them for years. He personally investigated hundreds of cases. According to him, Connecticut's energy fields are different from other states. These energy fields can hold traces of certain events. Traumatic deaths, violent emotions, great suffering. All of these somehow seep into the soil, the walls, the air. And these traces sometimes reveal themselves. Scientists reject this theory, of course. They say energy cannot be stored this way, but interestingly, electromagnetic field measurements taken in Connecticut show abnormal results in certain areas, especially near old cemeteries, abandoned buildings, and historical massacre sites. Many of these areas overlap with places where paranormal activity reports are concentrated. Coincidence? Maybe. But it must be acknowledged that it's quite an interesting coincidence. Ed Warren passed away in 2006. Lorraine Warren in 2019. For decades, they worked as America's most famous paranormal investigators. They examined thousands of cases. They helped hundreds of families, and they made Connecticut the center of paranormal research. But the legacy they left behind lives on. Their son Tony and daughter-in-law continue paranormal investigations. The Warren Museum still houses the world's largest collection of cursed objects. The Annabelle doll, satanic ritual masks, cursed mirrors, enchanted jewelry. Each one has a story behind it. Each one has deaths, tragedies, and unexplained events behind it. The museum is no longer open to the public for security reasons. After Lorraine's death in 2019, the family restricted visits. But private tours are still organized, and everyone who attends these tours says the same thing. There's something in that house. You might not see it. You can't touch it. But you know it's there. You feel it. And the new generation of paranormal investigators continues where the Warrens left off. Dozens of paranormal research groups are actively working in Connecticut. TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, is based in Warwick, Rhode Island, but constantly conducts research in Connecticut. You might remember the Ghost Hunters television program. That's the team. These groups work with modern technology, thermal cameras, night vision devices, electromagnetic field detectors, infrasound recording equipment, audio analysis software. Equipment that couldn't even be imagined 20 years ago has now become standard research tools. The evidence collected by these groups is controversial, of course. Skeptics say every image, every audio recording has natural explanations. Dust particles, electromagnetic interference, sound reflections. But researchers insist that some evidence is absolutely unexplainable, and some of this evidence is truly impressive. In 2021, a paranormal research group was filming in an abandoned building in Bridgeport. It was an old factory. In the early 1900s, a worker had died there horribly. The group recorded throughout the night. When they reviewed the recordings in the morning, they found a clear whisper coming from a room where no one was present. When the whisper was run through audio analysis software, it sounded like it was saying, "Get out of here," in English. Clear, distinct. The group never entered that building again. When you talk to Connecticut residents, you notice something interesting. Most people don't openly acknowledge paranormal events. You'll find very few people who say, "I believe in ghosts," but they don't deny it either. There's a kind of silent acceptance, a kind of respect. A 67-year-old man living in Hartford told me this: "A lot has happened on this land, good things and bad things. Wars, massacres, epidemics, tragedies. Some things leave a trace. You don't have to believe in it, but you should respect it. You should respect this land, this history, these stories." This respect has become part of Connecticut culture. People think twice before demolishing old houses. They lower their voices when passing near cemeteries. They approach historical buildings with respect. And at night, they avoid passing through forested roads alone. A woman I met in New Haven told a story from her childhood. Her family lived in an old house. Strange sounds came from the basement. Her mother would say, "It's just the house settling," every time. But one day, the basement door opened by itself. No one touched it. There was no wind. The door slowly creaked open. Her mother went down to the basement that day and spoke loudly. "This is your home," she said. "But this is our home now, too. We can live together, but I won't let you scare my children." After that day, the strange sounds decreased. The door never opened by itself again. Superstition? Maybe. Placebo effect? Could be. But this is the product of a 400-year tradition, and perhaps this tradition exists for a reason. Perhaps Connecticut residents know something we don't. Can paranormal activity be scientifically proven? This question has been debated for years. Skeptics say the evidence is insufficient. Every photograph could be manipulated, every audio recording could be misinterpreted, every testimony could be the product of imagination. But some scientists approach the subject with a more open mind. Quantum physics, the nature of consciousness, multiverse theories, all of these challenge our traditional understanding of physics. Maybe ghosts are leaks from a parallel dimension. Maybe cursed objects really can store negative energy. Maybe some places really can carry traces of traumatic events. The Pure Project at Princeton University researched for years whether human consciousness could affect random event generators. The results were controversial, but some anomalies were detected. Duke University's Ryan Research Center conducted experiments on telepathy and precognition. Again, controversial results, but statistically significant deviations. Connecticut isn't at the center of this research, but the state's concentration of paranormal activity attracts researchers here. Every year, dozens of academics, independent researchers, and enthusiasts visit Connecticut's haunted locations. They collect data, they analyze, and most of the time they encounter things they cannot explain. Would you go to such a place? Write in the comments.
Connecticut is changing. New buildings are constructed every year, old houses are demolished, forests are cut down, roads are widened. Modernization reaches every corner of the state. Technology replaces traditions. But some things don't change. Dudleytown is still a forbidden zone. The Dark Entry Forest Association continues to protect the forest. The Warren Museum still accepts visitors. The White Lady is still seen at Union Cemetery. And every year, new paranormal activity reports come in, new stories are told, new witnesses come forward. It's as if this state refuses to forget its past, as if Connecticut itself wants to keep what happened in its memory. Perhaps the soil remembers, perhaps the walls remember, perhaps the trees don't forget what they've seen for centuries. The younger generation of Connecticut residents sees these stories with different eyes. For them, The Conjuring is a movie. Annabelle is a horror icon. The Warrens are figures of the past. But even they, when they're alone in old houses at night, feel that something is different, that something is watching. Are ghosts real?
Do curses exist? Can some places really be haunted? I don't know the definitive answers to these questions. No one really does. These people, these families, these witnesses experienced something. Even if they can't fully explain what they experienced something. And perhaps the real question is this: do we have to explain it? Perhaps some things should remain mysterious. Perhaps the unknown is part of life. Perhaps Connecticut's dark secrets remind us exactly this. We don't know everything. We can't explain everything. And that's as fascinating as it is frightening. If you've also had a paranormal experience, share it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Maybe your story will be the subject of the next video. Maybe your experience will make others feel they're not alone. Throughout this video, we traveled to Connecticut's darkest corners, from Dudleytown's cursed forests to the Snedeker family's funeral home nightmare, from the chilling legend of the Melonheads to the Warrens' paranormal legacy. Each story pulled us a little deeper. Each detail left a few more questions. Now, if this video gave you goosebumps, hit the like button. This simple action helps the algorithm show this video to more people. Subscribe and click the bell icon. Every week, I share new horror stories, mysterious events, unexplained phenomena, and dark histories. The next video might be about your state. And when you get into bed tonight, if you feel something strange in your room, it's probably just your imagination. It's probably just the house settling. It's probably just the wind. Probably. But what if it's not? If Connecticut stories taught you anything, it's this: some things can't be explained, and some things are watching us in the dark. See you in the next video. Until then, keep the lights on, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't forget to look behind you. Because maybe, right at this moment, something is watching you. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe right now. Hit the like button and share the strangest paranormal experience you've ever had in the comments. See you in the next videos. Take care of yourselves.